There's a specific kind of empty feeling that has nothing to do with hunger. It's standing in a grocery aisle, scanning the shelf where something used to be, and realizing it's just not there, not on sale, not moved to a different aisle, gone. No recall, no news story, no warning. One day it was in your cart every week, and the next day it simply wasn't manufactured anymore. America has lost more snacks than most people realize, and almost none of them got a send-off. Today, we're counting down 20 of them. The ones that vanished so quietly that an entire generation forgot they existed until right now. Number 1. Bonkers Candy. Nabisco launched this fruit-filled chew in 1985, and for a few years it was everywhere, helped along by an ad campaign where a giant piece of fruit literally fell from the sky and conked someone on the head. It was soft, almost gel-like, and it came in flavors like watermelon and grape that tasted more like candy versions of fruit than fruit itself. Kids loved the gimmick as much as the candy. By the early 1990s, Nabisco quietly discontinued it, and Bonkers slid into that strange category of candy that people remember the commercial for more than the taste. Number 2. Hostess Choco-Diles. Picture a Twinkie but dipped entirely in chocolate. That was the pitch, and it worked exactly as well as you'd expect. Hostess introduced them in the 1960s as a regional treat before expanding distribution, and for decades they sat next to the regular Twinkies as the slightly fancier option. When Hostess went through bankruptcy and restructuring in 2012, Choco-Diles didn't survive the relaunch. The brand came back. This particular product didn't. Number 3. Keebler Magic Middles. These were shortbread cookies with a chocolate or peanut butter center sealed completely inside, no visible filling from the outside, which felt like a magic trick to a kid in the 1980s. You'd bite in expecting plain cookie and get a warm hidden core instead. Keebler discontinued them in the 1990s as the company streamlined its cookie lineup toward bigger, simpler sellers. No cookie since has quite replicated that specific surprise in the middle mechanic. Number 4. Squeezit drinks. Not a snack exactly, but absolutely a snack time staple. A soft plastic bottle of fruit-flavored drink you squeeze directly into your mouth, no straw required. General Mills ran them through the 1990s with flavors like Berry Bee Wild and Slammin' Strawberry Banana. The bottles themselves became a kind of currency on elementary school playgrounds. General Mills phased them out in the early 2000s as juice pouches and squeeze packs took over the category, and the specific ritual of squeezing the bottle dry disappeared with them. Number 5. Wonder Bread's Wonder Twins Fruit Pies. Before there were toaster pastries in every flavor imaginable, there were hand pies, individually wrapped, baked rather than frosted, sold at gas stations and corner stores. Several regional bakeries made versions through the 1960s and 70s. Dense, not overly sweet, the kind of thing a trucker or a kid on a road trip bought without thinking twice. As bakeries consolidated and shelf-stable snack cakes from bigger manufacturers took over distribution, most of these small-batch hand pies vanished from store shelves entirely, absorbed into bigger brands or simply discontinued. Number 6. Nabisco Famous Chocolate Wafers. Thin, dark, almost bitter chocolate cookies that weren't really meant to be eaten plain. Their actual purpose was construction material, stacked with whipped cream between layers and refrigerated overnight to make an icebox cake, a dessert that was a staple of 1960s dinner parties. Nabisco made them for decades. Production quietly stopped in 2022, and the specific icebox cake recipe printed on the back of every box, the one that defined a particular kind of suburban entertaining, lost its key ingredient. Number 7. Lifesavers Holes. In the 1980s, someone at Lifesavers had a genuinely clever idea. Package the actual holes from the candy, tiny round discs, as their own product. It was marketed almost as a joke, candy that celebrated its own negative space. They came in the classic 5-flavor roll, just miniaturized. The novelty wore off faster than the company hoped, and Lifesavers holes disappeared by the early 1990s, leaving behind one of the more genuinely funny ideas in candy history that nobody talks about anymore. Number 8. Pepperidge Farm. Goldfish pretzel flavor blends from the 1970s original lineup, specifically the cheddar and pretzel combo bags sold before the brand standardized into the cheddar cracker everyone knows today. Early Goldfish marketing leaned into novelty mixed bags with pretzel pieces and different cheese coatings rotating seasonally. As Goldfish crackers became a mass-market staple through the 1980s, Pepperidge Farm narrowed the lineup to its best sellers, and those early rotating blends were never brought back. Number 9. Reggie Bar. Built around baseball legend Reggie Jackson, this caramel, peanut, and chocolate bar launched in 1978 by Standard Brands timed to his World Series run with the Yankees. Famously, fans threw the bars onto the field after Jackson hit a home run on opening day, which is either the greatest or strangest moment in candy marketing history depending on how you look at it. The bar itself was solid, dense, peanut-heavy. It didn't survive the 1980s as Standard Brands merged into Nabisco, and athlete-branded candy fell out of fashion. The bar disappeared. The story about fans throwing them onto a baseball field somehow survived better than the candy did. Number 10. Banana Frosted Flakes. Kellogg's tested fruit-flavored variations on its core cereals constantly through the 1970s, and the banana version of Frosted Flakes had a genuine following for a few years before quietly getting pulled. Cereal companies ran far more limited regional test flavors than people remember, often distributed in a handful of states to gauge demand. Banana Frosted Flakes tested well enough to stick around briefly, not well enough to become permanent, and it slipped out of production with essentially no documentation beyond the memories of people who happened to live where it was sold. Number 11. Carnation Instant Breakfast Bars, the original chocolate chip version. Before instant breakfast was just a powder you mixed into milk, Carnation made a chewy bar version in the 1970s, dense, slightly grainy, fortified with vitamins and marketed directly to busy parents trying to get something nutritious into kids who refused to sit down for breakfast. The texture was unlike anything else on shelves, somewhere between a granola bar and a candy bar. As the breakfast bar category exploded in the 1980s with more refined competitors, the original formula was reworked into something closer to what exists today, and that specific dense, grainy chocolate chip bar disappeared into reformulation. Number 12. Screaming Yellow Zonkers. A candy-coated popcorn snack from the Lincoln Snacks Company that ran through the 1970s with one of the strangest, most aggressively branded packaging jobs in snack food history. Bright yellow boxes covered in psychedelic text and a tagline that practically dared you not to buy it. The product itself was simple, sweet, glazed popcorn, but the branding made it a cult favorite among teenagers in particular. It bounced between manufacturers for years before finally disappearing from shelves for good in the 2000s, and the packaging is now more collectible than the snack ever was. Number 13. Burger King's Jumbo Sandwich. Sold as a hot snack item through drive-thrus in the late 1960s and 70s. A baked ham and cheese sandwich on a bun that functioned more like a snack than a full meal. It predates the chicken sandwich wars by decades and represented an entirely different idea of what a fast food snack could be. Burger King pulled it from menus in the late 1970s as the chain streamlined toward burger-focused offerings, and it became one of those items longtime customers ask about for years without ever getting an answer. Number 14. Andy Capp's Cheddar Fries, not to be confused with the hot fries that still exist today. The original cheddar version, a tangy, orange-dusted corn snack shaped like thin fries, ran through the 1970s and 80s as a regional Midwest favorite before Goodmark Foods narrowed the lineup. The hot fries survived because they found a dedicated audience. The cheddar version simply didn't sell at the same scale, and it was discontinued with no announcement, leaving behind a flavor combination nothing currently on shelves quite matches. Number 15. Pop Rocks grape flavor specifically. Pop Rocks themselves never disappeared, but the original lineup in the 1970s included a grape flavor alongside cherry and orange that got quietly dropped as the company, General Foods at the time, narrowed production after the candy's brief but intense popularity spike. The mythology around Pop Rocks, mostly an urban legend about them being dangerous when mixed with soda, overshadowed the much smaller, much realer story of half the original flavor lineup just vanishing. Number 16. Space Food Sticks. Pillsbury developed these in partnership with NASA's nutrition research in 1970, a chewy, caramel-textured stick meant to evoke astronaut food, riding the same wave of space-age marketing that hit cereal boxes throughout the decade. They came in chocolate, peanut butter, and caramel, individually wrapped, sold as a portable energy snack for kids. The novelty was the entire pitch. Eat what astronauts eat. As the moon landing excitement faded through the 1970s, So did the product, discontinued by the early 1980s, taking an entire marketing era with it. Number 17. Cheetos Puffed Balls. An early 1970s variant of the standard Cheeto shaped as a round puff rather than the familiar curl, marketed briefly as a novelty alternative texture. Frito-Lay tested it regionally as part of broader experimentation with extruded snack shapes during that decade. It never achieved the market penetration of the standard curl, and within a few years it was folded back into the core Cheetos lineup, leaving the curl as the only shape anyone remembers. Number 18. Wise Onion Rings. A corn-based ringed snack from Wise Foods sold throughout the 1960s and 70s as a competitor to Funyuns, which launched later in 1969 and eventually dominated the category entirely. Wise's version had a slightly different, more savory seasoning and a following loyal enough to keep it on East Coast shelves well past when most people assume Funyuns had already won that fight. Production wound down gradually through the 1980s as Funyuns' national distribution overwhelmed regional competitors, and Wise Onion Rings disappeared without the kind of single dramatic discontinuation date most products get. Number 19. Drake's Funny Bones. Not gone entirely everywhere, but effectively vanished from most of the country after Drake's parent company went through repeated bankruptcies and restructurings starting in 2013. The peanut butter-filled chocolate cake snack had been a lunchbox staple in the Northeast since the 1960s. Dense cake, thick peanut butter filling, a specific texture combination nothing else on shelves matched. Distribution shrank so gradually through buyouts and plant closures that most of the country lost access to it, without any single moment marking the loss, just an aisle that quietly stopped carrying it. Number 20. Bachman's Pretzel Logs. An oversized, hollow pretzel snack from the Bachman Company of Pennsylvania that ran through the 1960s and into the 80s, sold as a more substantial alternative to standard pretzel sticks. They were thick enough to feel like an actual snack rather than an afterthought, and they had a regional loyalty in Pennsylvania and the surrounding states that bordered on devotion. As larger snack conglomerates consolidated the pretzel category through the 1980s and 90s, the pretzel log lost shelf space to more standardized products, and it disappeared from most stores without the company ever issuing a formal discontinuation notice. 20 snacks. 20 small disappearances that never made a headline. Most of these didn't go out with a scandal or a recall or a controversy. They went out the quiet way almost everything goes out. A slow decline in sales, a corporate restructuring, a shelf that needed the space for something else. Nobody at the company sent a press release. Nobody at home got a warning. You just reached for it one day, and it wasn't there. And eventually you stopped reaching. That's the thing about a disappearance like this. It doesn't feel like loss in the moment. It only becomes loss later, when you're standing in a grocery store decades later, scanning a shelf out of habit and your brain supplies a taste that doesn't exist anymore. A specific orange dust, a specific grape flavor, a specific dense peanut butter filling that nothing on shelves today quite replicates, no matter how hard the substitutes try. If any of these brought something back, a flavor, a wrapper, a corner store shelf you haven't thought about in years, tell us in the comments. Which one did you grow up with? Which one do you still think about? And if you're new here, this is what we do at Lostways America. Every week we go back. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If this video was worth your time, a like helps more people find us.